Welcome to episode 314 of the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. I am Dave Deacon, and we got a really interesting episode for you. Today on the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast, we're talking with Oklahoma State University ag economist and associate professor, Dr. John Michael Reilly. And before we do that, go ahead and tap that subscribe button where you get your podcast. And remember, you can find out more information about what we talk about on this episode and past episodes on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. Now let's take a trip around the table, tucked away in a huddle room in the new Ag Hall on the campus of Oklahoma State University, for an introduction to the dream team of dirt and everything that grows from it. Let's start with Oklahoma State University Extension Precision Nutrient Management Specialist.
Hey man, drag and drop, how many are just blown away by the drag and drop function is insane, even as a senior.
Dr. Brian Arnell. And sitting next to him is Oklahoma State University Extension Cropping System Specialist.
You've seen us do it. I mean, you've been in Extension. You've seen, me and Brian put up economic breakdown that is probably, I'm sure, very wrong.
Dr. Josh Lofton. Now we're going to start things off with a crop update recorded just last Tuesday, which would be September 3rd, 2024. And as you can tell, not a lot has changed in the weather world or really the crops since then. So, Dr. Brian Arnell will kick things off once I say those magic words. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast.
It's drying down. We've our full seasons are being harvested right now. We've got corn shelled across the state. Sorghum's going out. Soybeans still got a little bit to go on our full season. Double crop is coming along. Actually, we just got some pictures of some double crop corn south of Perry that looks pretty good. Everything's struggling. The full season corn's been really hit or miss from what I've seen. A lot of huge misses and then some just okays. Sorghum, I've actually seen some really nice sorghum driving around. The beans are on the struggle bus, and they're hurting. We need a dose of rain statewide. I know the South just got a little bit today as we're recording, but we need our North Central to get some rain.
With the cooler temperatures that we're experiencing after all that heat, are we going to see the stress on the plants?
Yeah, if we ended up getting the rain we were supposed to last weekend, it probably would be a different story. But that, I think a lot of growers that I talked to that last week, that 100 degrees last week, or that first week, or that last week in August was what did it in. If we had turned off cool a week earlier, or if we'd gotten a big rain shower the week before, I think we could have held off a lot. But at this point in time, I know a lot of folks are just bailing up the soybeans, going to wheat. I think we've just kind of moved on.
Yeah. What's the percentage of loss that we see in those soybeans every year? It seems like every year there's somebody that's, just calling it a crop and just gonna, I'm just gonna bail up the soybeans and go to wheat. What do we see as that?
I think we see some every year, but I think people get the misconception that we see that in our summer crops and we don't in our wheat.
Right.
When we come to the realization that 1 million plus acres gets grazed out because it doesn't look very good come February.
Yeah.
So, we get that. It's Oklahoma. We get that in every crop.
Look at him trying to take up for his summer crops here.
We also put, some of the zeroed out acres and bean, quality acres, and we don't in wheat. I think we've seen a big stretch. There was a 3 or 4 year stretch where I don't know anybody that zeroed out like soybean, which is why so many people are planting soybean right now.
Yeah.
And, we had an old student that's down in Southwest Oklahoma farming, and he told me 1 year that he made such good yields. 1 year he could miss for the next 6 or 7 and still probably be in the black just because of how good it was that 1 year hit. And there's some areas that are growing soybean that probably shouldn't.
That's my
But we've had some areas grow corn that probably shouldn't for the last 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
Because they have a reason against soybean, or they have a reason against sorghum, or they have a reason against going something else during the summer. And that's okay. But it's just like every year, even on the sorghum, we have some mile markers that look really good, and there's some mile markers that look really bad.
Yeah.
And if you look at like one of our traditionally our best production areas in north central Oklahoma, K County is the epitome of that. I mean, that's usually a really big row crop, summer crop area, and it's missed like every rain this year, and it's really bad situations. So, I mean, it's Oklahoma. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But it is wheat time for Oklahoma, so they've been dropping seed in the ground since the middle of August. Mm-hmm. I've seen some coming up now here in Payne County because we got 2 guys that always go during the county fair. Doesn't matter what. They're going to drop seed before the county fair year in, year out. Concerns as far as that graze out stuff, the folks got a lot of gas on early, a lot of nitrogen on early as expected. I have bigger concerns right now. So that stuff that's in the ground, it's hot, it's dry, and we've both seen a ton of armyworm.
Oh, a ton of armyworms.
And so if it's up, they're going to have to spray. The bigger problem now is that price difference, at least on the grain side. So those grain-only guys that are planning what they're doing right now, you have low wheat price. Nitrogen price isn't bad, so you have cheap anhydrous, relatively cheap. Depending on where you quote it, the urea is not that high right now. But the fear is, and some of the chatter I've heard, is that by springtime, the prices could be quite a bit higher. And so, there's a lot of balances. We've shown over and over again that the pre-plant nitrogen on the grain only actually is a net negative if that's all you go with, and there's not a lot of value in the split. But we're looking at, 25, 30 cent nitrogen now, and some are projecting, I expect 50 cents, but some are projecting upwards of 70 cents in the springtime. So how much of that cheap stuff do you put on now, even if it is actually yield? You take a little bit of a yield loss. So there's this balance on economics people are having to look at. Going to have to do a little bit of, budgeting out. Can we pre-buy now for deliver in December? And I got to expect there's quite a bit of that going to happen.
So with that, hold on, Dave. I think that's a great time to introduce our guest.
Right.
Brian had the best transition. No, stop, Dave. You and your Hawaiian shirt can stop.
My Hawaiian shirt. Well, it is, but...
So, Dave, I think it's the best time to bring in our guest.
Sounds great. So tell us about our guest.
Master economist. I mean, now is the man with the plan.
And he's devising a plan for you, Josh, right now. You can see it in his eyes.
We got John Michael Reilly, who's been at OSU for a number of years now.
Almost 10.
Is usually really big in the classroom, doing a lot of things, and has taken over a little bit of an extension presence, especially in the sun-ups, I hear. So wanted to get him on, talk a little bit about kind of what we're talking about. It's wheat time, it's budget time, so we'll come on and talk a little bit about budget. And like every good guest we've had, we ran into the hall and we asked him, and he asked how to prepare, and I said, if you prepare, we won't go over anything you prepared. So I just told him to come with coffee, and he just came with a fork instead. So
that is intriguing.
Have fork will travel, man.
So JMR, why don't you introduce a little bit?
Arnold just completely setting me up perfectly, or maybe imperfectly.
Mm-hmm. And whatever you do, don't forget your fork. And he brought his fork. That's great.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit more about your background.
What do you do?
Well, since I've been at Oklahoma State, I've been in the classroom predominantly. I've got a 25% research appointment and dabble in some things related to markets and futures markets, and came from Mississippi State prior to being here at Oklahoma State, and spent all those years as 100% extension economist working with crop and livestock markets. So kind of getting back into some of those old grooves there, and not in it yet, I will say, and certainly some fairly large shoes to fill from Kim's role, but enjoying it so far, and look forward to assisting in whatever way I can.
So what was your question going to be, Dave?
I
forgot.
No, I was, well, this actually may work out. So I'm glad you stopped me on that. My question was, whenever the producers are putting the seed in the ground in August and it's hot and the seed may not make it, why would they go ahead and do that?
I would say all three of us have our own opinion, or the similar opinion. One, it's because that's how they've done it.
Yeah.
That's the time frame to go. The risk, I mean, if they put it in dry ground, the biggest risk is a shallow rain that germinates it and it dies.
Yeah.
That's their biggest risk. It can sit there for a while. I mean, it's dry soil. We have a lot of stuff we do by calendar. no matter what other
That's
people suggest them to do it by, they do it by calendar and less environment.
Well, and I think it's this time of year we have so much of the really sporadic rains. Like Southern Oklahoma wasn't supposed to get rain this morning,
That's
but
true.
They got it, right? Like we ended up only supposed to get a tenth down at Perkins on Friday, and they got an inch and a tenth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of them just want to get in. I mean, they're going to feed cattle. It's kind of what the economic advantage is right now, and so they got to get that cow chow in the ground and get it up. And it's less of a risk to go now than it is to wait for a rain that might or might not happen. And sometimes in the fall it starts raining, it just doesn't stop raining, and then they don't get that fall growth that they need for cattle.
I think both of those answers are correct. I think we're creatures of comfort, and we all follow our certain patterns, just like markets do. And a lot of it has to do with risk. I mean, I think, what we know today is what we know. Tomorrow is unknown, so it's worked in the past. And, I may get burned by doing it early, but I'm just as likely to be burned if I wait till tomorrow. So I think we kind of fall back into looking at the calendar and letting that drive our decisions. I mean, I think prices are playing a role, and, you mentioned fertilizer being a little cheap right now. I think that's something that everyone's looking at, and whether that means they delay purchases in the late winter, early spring, probably, but they at least know what they've got right now.
So what are some of the techniques that you can look at especially in this environment? I hear a lot of podcasts about the Corn Belt, and there's a lot of stuff going, and as far as marketing and all that stuff, but when you're in this system, you're especially a cow-calf operator, you've got some grazing and a little bit of grains. What are some of the marketing techniques? Or is there anything at all they could do for risk management?
Oh, there's certainly lots of things they could do for risk management. The question is, do we all do them? And do we execute them, textbook? Probably no to both of those. But I mean, again, kind of getting into that risk conversation, the beautiful thing about where we're at is that we essentially can have that dual crop. We can have the wheat and the cattle, and that's, you get a little bit insulated in one or the other by doing both. Right now, cattle market's pretty strong. I mean, obviously, it's had some its own little ups and downs, but relative to years, it's a good market, and that may be enticing some folks to go a little heavier on wheat so that they've got a little bit more capacity to run some cattle. But in terms of what can we do, I mean, obviously, we can look at forward pricing and kind of protecting that price. Insurance is one of the things that's readily available, and the other thing is to just we think about what we can do on the budget side and just drive minimizing cost. Not trying to necessarily go maximize profits, which that's what I just had a conversation in the classroom today about, what are ag producers? Are they profit maximizers? I said probably not. More often they're cost minimizers. So what can I do to beat down the cost? Some of that comes back to doing what I know and doing it and doing it as well as I can, and leaving some of the other things off to the side, not trying to be a master of all these other aspects of the operation that I know I'm not a master at. But if I put the crop in the ground at the time that I'm used to, I know what I'm dealing with, and I can certainly, execute that as best as possible.
So I'm kind of curious, John Michael, if you have somebody come up to you, because I know my approach, and I probably know Josh's, you have somebody come up to you, you don't really know them, but they want to learn, they want to implement something. What's the path that you walk down to figure out what works for a producer? I mean, whether it's marketing, whether it's purchasing, how do you figure out, and the conversation goes along the lines for somebody says, okay, they really don't have a plan whatsoever. And my assumption is you got to figure out where they are in terms of their risk and what kind of risk they want to take.
If I don't know them, my first response is, what's your budget look like, right? Have you put together a budget? And if the answer is no, then that's step number one, is know what you're working with. What are your costs? You don't really, you can't necessarily make any promises on the revenue side, the income side, but you need to know what your costs are. And if they don't know what that is, I think that's step one. I think most of us are past that. I think most producers to know today, if they don't have it nailed down, they've got a pretty good idea just through where we're at with technology and available information. Yeah. So then after that, I would say, what is price? and what is your price, right? Are you comfortable? Not that you can name your price, but is today's price, are you comfortable with it? And if the answer there is yes, then I think it's always a good idea to try to lock not necessarily all of it down. You don't necessarily want to just go put everything in that boat. But if you're comfortable with price, lock down what you are comfortable with locking down, and then put it under the mattress, right? And don't even think about it. Don't beat yourself up if there's a better price out there that comes tomorrow, and be comfortable in the fact that if the price moves the other direction, you've got that. Have a price in mind. Once that price is there, or if it is there, try to secure, again, I hesitate to say all of it, but, certainly want to try to capitalize on it as much as possible. I think it's back something you said earlier about the soybean producer that had a really good year that would suffice them for a number of years. I think that has a lot to do with where they were at, and them. I doubt they're just losing tail on end, year after year because they wouldn't be in operation, but they're probably covering their cost in those other years, and that one good year just kind of helped pay down some debt, kind of get rid of some of that ancillary expenses that if we can get rid of through, financed costs, things of that nature, knock that out. Then you've got the mediocre years, the, slightly in the black years that you can certainly make work a lot easier if you've taken care of some of that other stuff.
Well, and I think it's one of the reasons why we've seen this big flush of summer crops is not only has things changed to where we can grow it, but we've gotten so good at marketing our wheat and marketing our cattle, so they provide a nice baseline for us to make some mistakes on our row crops, to go out and try to get that one big good year on corn that, like you said, can pay down a lot of debt, could invest in new land, new equipment, but we always know we have that safety blanket of wheat and cattle that we've, not only can we grow pretty good, but we've started really marketing a lot better than we did 20 years ago.
No doubt than 20 years ago. I mean, to toot Extension's horn, to toot, your land grant universities, and this isn't just, obviously Oklahoma State here, but all across the nation. I think it's the fact that I think our producers are more educated than 20, 30 years ago. I think that they, the advancements in research and technology are certainly allowing us to make the mistakes are more hidden. I mean, I was another conversation just of late is if that big rain comes, you can cover a tremendous amount of ground with today's equipment relative to just 10 years ago. Let's go 2030. It's crazy how much we can make up there. And again, that's not necessarily a mistake, but it's able to get moving faster, to get in a good spot quicker than just a few years ago.
Well, I can only imagine, and I'm really asking to see what it's like. What's the difference in the accessibility of the data for a producer to forward contract or do some of these things today versus 20 years ago versus when you're in college? I can't even imagine. The amount of data right now is probably overwhelming, but just the capability to set a contract is probably easier.
It is very easy, or much easier. I shouldn't say very easy, but it's much easier than 10, 20 years ago when you really had to go through, some antiquated brokerage type operation. And those still exist and they're still there's still a purpose for them. So that's not necessarily knocking that. It's just saying that the ability for producers to get on their phone, to get on their computer and look at markets, look at futures markets, cash markets, not necessarily having to call around, spending a day on the phone, all that type of stuff. Though they can, but they don't have to. And also, if we look at the cost of this type of risk management has come down quite a bit as well. Whether it be your commissions or your transaction fees that are associated with forward contracts, with futures contracts, and with insurance, that all has really, again, it's not zero, but it's not as high as it used to be.
I want to, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, and you can't, because Brian loves telling me I'm wrong. It's a favorite pastime of his.
He's not wrong.
But are we almost tipped the scale on too much on the other way? Because like you first started by saying you got to set a price, lock it in, and walk away. But you're right, is we just sit there, growers are refreshing the market. Do we have too much access to information that we risk, or we fear risking something knowing that, with that information that we know we made a mistake, or
if you let yourself, yes, right. I mean, that's if you have the wherewithal to make a commitment, and or you're comfortable with it. Again, I always say, look at your budget. Try to find your break even in some fashion, and then work off of that. And to your point earlier about how we're moving in today's environment with all the delusion of the data that we're able to soak up, if we can even soak it all up. Yeah, I think it's easy to get in that trap. I mean, just normal Joe or Jane consumer sitting there, all the different things that we can buy online nowadays can be a little overwhelming, and yet we still do probably more of it than we should. Producers probably can get lost in it, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with cruising through your phone and seeing what markets are doing, but you just got to have the conviction of, once I make that decision, don't beat yourself up over it. It's just like making the mistakes on the production side. Are we going to make some mistakes? Yes. Are we able to kind of hide those a little bit more in today's environment? Maybe so, but the same can be said on the marketing, right? We can look back. Hindsight's 20/20. That's a phrase my dad would use, and I'm pretty sure we all are familiar with it. Hindsight's 20/20, and you can't let yourself get lost looking in the rearview mirror about coulda, shoulda, woulda.
My dad always uses the phrase, you can't answer if questions. And it sounds like that's a great approach to it. Any market decision that you're going to make, hey, what if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? So
and don't necessarily not. I mean, reevaluate next year. Yeah. Think about the what ifs and say, okay, if there was, I mean, I hesitate to say it's a mistake, because they're really, as long as you're comfortable with the price that you're committing to, then there shouldn't be a mistake there.
Right.
But can we look back and say, oh, well, I might try this next year, because I saw maybe there was something different, or it seemed like an opportunity, and always just pretend to do it, right? I mean, you can always just on the back of an envelope put down what you would have done, see how it would work, and maybe don't let one. Of course, that's another thing. Don't just let one year of good fortune, or paper fortune, lead you down the wrong path. But still, let that be part of your evaluation process for the next time.
So here's one of those stupid questions, because I don't know anything about it. I get how grain's marketed in bushels. How's livestock market? How's beef? Is it pounds? Is it young, old? How does it work on the cattle side?
Well, I mean, it's small guys are usually one head at a time. Your medium to bigger guys are probably putting together some loads, and it's generally dollars per pound, dollars per hundredweight on the animal itself. Once it gets past that, you're marketing still per pound, but it's obviously you're dealing with the carcass and the cuts themselves. So,
well, I guess is there any futures, so I could forward contract?
Yeah.
Okay, so you still do that on pounds. So I'm trying to in grain crops, I'm looking at, okay, how much my total expected crop? I want to contract 70% if I expect a 100 bushel yield. I might contract 70% or 65%. On the gain side, or the increase side, is that still the same thought? Okay, I have 200 head. I'm hoping for this much gain, so I'm going to contract out this much, or how does that?
Certainly, yes. That no different than your expected production based on, number one, your history, number two, your soil management, your soil nutrient profile. You're putting together expected yields. Livestock folks are doing the same thing. They're starting with and again, this gets back into creatures of comfort. We're probably starting with about the same size animal that we did last year. We're buying mostly the same types of animals, whether it's black-hided or semi-based, whatever it may be. You're probably going back to that well, and your typical average daily gain is driving that calculation. And if they're starting at 700 pounds and 2 pounds a day, or 500 pounds or 450, 2 pounds a day, you're going to get them to somewhere around 7 at some point, or whatever. It's all different for different producers, but it's all driven by what you're typically going to get in gain. And then, there's an expected end weight after the grazing period.
I know y'all economists hate us agronomists doing napkin math.
I know.
Just breaking out the big guns. All right.
I mean, you've seen us do it. I mean, you've been in extension. You've seen, me and Brian put up, economic breakdown that is probably, I'm sure, very wrong. I guess Where's the biggest thing that, like, I guess if you're looking at a production side, you miss? I don't want to keep saying make the mistake, but you're not doing it correctly from an economic standpoint. Do you understand where I'm coming from here?
I think I'm I thought you were headed somewhere else.
I did too. I was headed that way just anyways.
I started cringing, and I kind of quit listening for half a second there.
It's okay. Brian does the same thing.
Well, all of my students do the same thing too, so I can't necessarily complain about them doing that anymore. But I guess I would go back to the first question out of my mouth if I were to visit somebody that I don't know and just no history with. Do you have a budget? And I think sometimes that maybe is a mistake that we don't have with production, is not knowing what our costs are. Most do nowadays, so I think that's becoming a less of an issue. And the other thing is, not focusing on what you have complete control over, and that is, your land, your soil, your seed variety. I mean, those are things that you can certainly control, and that's where to me, we talk about risk management on the marketing side, but in my mind, I grew up in the livestock side of things and never really heavy into big row crop production ag. So let me caveat that by what I'm about to say with that. But I think it would go both ways of what a producer has the most control over is those things, the production, the actual production. And that's why I've always envied you and your positions, because y'all have great answers for all of that. And as an economist, I don't always have great answers for the questions about, let me go back to, I thought your question was going to be where price is headed. I hate that question.
No. But we know better.
So I mean, but to me, that's the risk management comes in doing the job of producing the crop to the best of your ability. Obviously, weather, you can't control it, but you can control the seed variety, you can control the soil nutrients, you can control the size of the tractor, the size of the planter, how many times you go through the field or you don't go through the field. Those are things that you're doing to squeeze every yield bushel out of that. And again, we don't want to necessarily be yield maximizers. I'm not necessarily saying that, but that's one of the things we can control the most. And if they're doing that correctly and they're putting a budget together correctly, to me, they're on the right foot. There's going to be some bad years, but they're not going to be without for lack of doing what they're supposed to be doing. Beyond that, maybe trying too much on the marketing side, I think, is sometimes where we can make mistakes. We can get to trying to play the markets a little too much. One of the things that comes up when we're talking about either forward contracting and more predominantly futures marketing, right? Using futures contracts, is staying on the right side of the fence of hedging versus speculating. There's a number of producers out there. I'm aware of a very few, but I've heard plenty of tales of many who thought they were hedging or kind of got away from hedging and started speculating, thinking they had an edge or an advantage, and it ended up the leverage that comes with trading a futures contract is great, and it can be really cool whenever it's in your favor, but it can take everything away when it's not.
So where did you think I was going?
Well, so you said it, is that we do back napkin math for our economy, economics. We've been told that we do it wrong.
Yes,
and I don't know if we've actually been told that, or if we just feel like we've been told that because of the looks we get from economists. But so I want to go to John Michael and say, if I want to go to an extension meeting and I want to present profit or present economics of what we're doing, I usually do just input minus output cost, and that's the end. What am I missing? What do we do?
That's where I was going.
Do we need to do better as agronomists when we're presenting profitability analysis? And I use analysis as a very weak term, but where can we improve?
Is still an analysis. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, revenue minus cost is going to drive that conversation, and you're not wrong there. I would maybe say probably a little bit more sensitivity, which is, we call it sensitivity, but it's it's saying, well, if this changes, how does that change the end result? And so I've seen this done. So I'm not saying that it's not done on the agronomist or soil specialist side of things, but if the costs vary a little bit, how does that change the outcome? If the output price changes a little bit, or if the output yield, if that changes, if that's a little bit different, how does that change the outcome? So putting that together and giving, that way you give that picture of, here's what we think it's going to be, and then here's the ebbs and flows of how it may be different from this if these few things change.
That's a good question, and I like this because in some of the stuff I've done, I've had a couple of economist grad students that's helped me do a little bit better, not well. I typically present whatever it costs at that moment. When I paid for glyphosate, when I paid for fertilizer, when I sold grain, it's that immediate cost. How far back in the range do you go to look at the range of input cost versus the range of output cost against just that moment? Because we work off of moments so much, and you work off of trend.
That's fine. That and one of my mentors always said, the thing that I hate the most is that over the past 5 years, here's what would happen. Because, that's a small window of time, and you're really kind of predicating on the next 20 years being like the last 5, and that's not always the case. So my knee-jerk response is I'm not necessarily worried about the back. I'm thinking about the forward and where are we headed. But that's really hard, man. That's hard to really get a gauge on. So how far back? I would say as long as you feel like you're capturing – you're not going to get 90% of the possible future outcomes, but as long as you're capturing a good chunk of what you think the future is going to look like, then you're doing a good job.
10-year Olympic average is what I heard.
I do that a lot. I do the 10-year. I love the Olympic average is probably the best
10-year Olympic
quick
average.
And dirty average that you can do, that you can calculate. Just a simple average, no. I like an Olympic average, and probably a 10-year is a good time frame. But yeah, I like an Olympic average.
Whenever you're talking with the students that are coming from all over the state, all over the country, they're coming to you to learn about marketing, crops and economics and all of that. But what type of questions are they coming from the farm with and needing help kind of understanding?
That's a good question. I've never gotten asked before, and I haven't put much thought into. But one of the biggest questions, things that blows their mind, is when we get into futures markets, and whether it's one class that's just a piece of, or a full class on futures markets. And I'll give you your answer quick, and then I'll follow that up with the futures class. But this function of the futures market, where there's a buyer and a seller of a contract, they may or may not have the actual crop or commodity, oil, gold or whatever that futures contract is, and that very few of them actually take that to delivery. That's probably one of the things that blows their mind the most. They're like, hold on just a second. You're saying that they make this promise to each other that one's going to bring the corn to the market, the other one's going to come and buy it, and yet that never happens. And I'm like, yes, that's the futures markets function in that way, that the rule of thumb is, certainly less than 2%. I would say it's probably less than 1% actually get delivered on, and accepted of delivery.
Wow.
Usually it's some sort of wild basis thing, and we hit that in 07 when wheat basis, man, what did it get to? Probably like $2 under or something like that. It was wild. A lot of producers wanted to deliver, and they found out it's hard to deliver on a futures contract. That's probably the biggest question I get when we get to that point, and it's you're lying, right? These things are made to be delivered, yes, but
it doesn't always happen.
Have a deliverable. There is a delivery location, so that those markets kind of stay connected. And then, so I was going to follow that up with so on the futures markets class, I have a class that we cover futures markets, and I tell them on day one, we could spend an entire semester talking just about the basics of futures. We could spend an entire semester talking about fundamental analysis and technical analysis, and a full semester just on risk and how we manage risk and hedging. And unfortunately, I got to shove all that into 16 weeks. And let me tell you, I get to the end of the semester and I'm like, I didn't cover this, and this, and good luck.
So I want to go along the same lines of a question as a teacher. What do you see the students coming in think they needing to know versus what they actually, because I could tell you our students come in and they have a desire, there's something they want or they believe they need to learn about. That's not always the same of what they actually probably need to learn. Is there anything you could relate to in your students?
Probably they need to learn they need to go to class. They need to take notes and pay attention when they're in class. And when they're asked to turn something in on a certain date, that they turn that thing in on that certain date, and they are that's just when they first get to college, they need to learn how to be a college student or a student first. But I would say from the ag business, for our ag business and ag econ students, that we're not necessarily going to teach them how to make money in farming. And I don't know that I get the sense that maybe they think they're coming in with they're going to learn a little bit of that, but certainly that's not what we're going to teach them. We're going to teach them how to make decisions that are risky, right? That there's risk associated with it, and how and we're going to teach them how others make those decisions. That and what do they need to know? I think our farm management course is really good. That's the one that dives in deep into to budgets and enterprise budgets and parcel budgets. That's not the foundation of business and economics, but that is so critical in production agriculture. Yep. And the other one, as we get into some price analysis, I'd love for our students to be much more comfortable with Microsoft Excel.
Amen.
And those
drag and drop. How many are just blown away by the drag and drop function is insane. Even as a senior,
I get a little dismayed when they are still punching the number in. They'll pull their phone up and do the calculation in their phone and then punch that answer into the Excel cell, and I'm just like, wow, you're a senior. Yeah. So we still have some of that. Yeah. I would love it if they didn't have that Excel phobia, if they broke that earlier.
So I don't know, Josh, I'd say on our side, what I was thinking is that I feel like a lot of ours coming in wanting the shiny. They want all the big things. And I feel that, half of the value we could bring is building the fundamentals of science and the basics so they can go out and ask the right questions, right? Like we're trying to build people that can ask the proper questions in tough environments and bring that way. When they first come in, all they know is buzzwords. Mm-hmm. And then, part of what we have to do is almost bring them back to a starting point. So this is the fundamentals of the soil, the plant, the environment. Once you build upon those, then you can chase the shine.
I go to soil fertility, right? And one of the biggest aha moments I had when I was an undergrad student is if you think of, again, how nutrients are redistributed in the plant and which direction they go, all the deficiency symptoms just make sense. Mm-hmm. But it's because the foundation, the fundamentals otherwise. I don't need to memorize the deficiency symptoms if you just think about what happens. Mm-hmm. And so I think they come in, and apologize for any students that are listening here, I think they come in thinking they're really good critical thinkers, but I think we have to teach them how to be critical thinkers. And I think that's really what, at least undergrad, if not a better part of your master's program should be, is going back to the fundamentals to learn how things get put together to get that big picture, because they just want to know the big picture, and they don't have these building blocks to we can teach them the big picture right now, but in 5 years that might not be the big picture. Mm-hmm. They won't be able to put it together if they don't know the fundamentals. And I think they come in, they're like, we got to go over photosynthesis again. It's like, yeah, but your biology teacher in high school taught it to you wrong, and it's not correct. And probably the same. I took an economy class or an economics class in high school. Yeah, but it's all wrong.
We start with black and white, and then everything gets just more gray. All we're doing is adding layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, no offense to biology and economics teachers out there that are listening either. So, two things. One, the scientific method. I think that's something that gets lost, and starting with a researchable question, and that doesn't necessarily apply just to those doing science. I mean, I think that's important just in society of. To your point, Brian, of what's the right question? Mm-hmm. How do we need to attack this problem issue that we have, and what are the right questions to be asking? I think that gets back to that scientific method, and we're still teaching it in college. I know y'all are. Mm-hmm. We are in economics even, because there are researchable questions on both sides. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go do the research, but you just need to have a good foundational question that can be potentially tested and answered. And then the other, to your point, Josh, of we got to learn this again. Why can't I just use my book, right? I'm not gonna have to memorize this. And it's a lot of times we're not wanting students to memorize something just for the sake of memorizing it. It's so that when they are, beyond Oklahoma State, that a lot of that's at their fingertips, right? And so that they don't necessarily have to go get the book, but even if they do have to go get the book, it's a quick find. It's not going to slow them down. So we're not necessarily trying to just get you to memorize the world, but we feel like there's some value in kind of beating that in there and kind of getting it ingrained in that brain, so that it is more readily accessible. That quick access memory that we've got in our own brains, not just our computer brains.
Well, I mean that I hate regurgitation as far as a teacher. I despise it. Yet I still make the student I require cycle. Or I ask of. I got to think of the right phrasing in that to reproduce a nitrogen cycle on a blank sheet of paper, and that's not necessarily because I want them to know every aspect, but being able to visualize it as a system, as a cycle for me allows so much, because there's biology, there's nutrient, there's water, there's all those things within that. And if you can at least visualize the cycle of nitrogen, a lot of the other nutrients start making a lot more sense in understanding that. So I agree.
It's not even that. And I think you guys made a good point is maybe sometimes, you learn the basics. And I say it all the time, and I made Beatrix mad, is like, you don't teach photosynthesis right. And she's like, well, I teach photosynthesis to every undergraduate student that comes through the College of Ag. I teach it like I'm a scientist to scientist students. But even like the nitrogen cycle, your nitrogen cycle, and anybody out there that has had to take either yours or Bill Ron's class understand, when I took that, I thought that was probably the most complex means to conceptualize nitrogen cycling ever. Until I got my master's in soil fertility and then went on to get a PhD, is that it's still just the basic building blocks of nitrogen movement in the environment, and you just continually have to build on that and build on that and build on that. Which probably goes back to our question on why agronomists do, the economics wrong, is because we just do the we just do the building blocks.
We do not want to take those advanced courses. We opted out of math and went straight into science.
That again, I said earlier that I envy how y'all are able to attack a problem because it is more black and white. Yeah. Even though you mentioned that it gets into the gray pretty quick for you guys. It's not just gray, it's all different shades of gray when you think about a market. There's so many moving parts. To your points earlier of the amount of information that's at our fingertips now, it's crazy, it's mind-blowing, and all of that is playing a role, whether it's a computer algorithm that's pulling that in and using it to trade, or whether it's a true trader that's just trying to absorb the information, whether it's a farmer that's trying to take it all in and getting overwhelmed. This stuff, you just can't isolate. Nothing is in a vacuum in a marketplace.
Well, it's not even that. It's that you're having to do already something that is more unknown than our system and how it interacts with our system in itself. And I go back to the back in 21. I think the wheat had a lot of rust in it, and that was the big decision mechanism of, do you put that late season fungicide on? And it's like, well, we can't put the cheap stuff on because the pre-harvest. So it was, do you put the expensive stuff on or not? And it was, you can never look back and say, even hindsight's 20. You said hindsight's 2020, but it's not, because you don't know if that expensive stuff would have done something. And then you would have never known if you would have delayed your harvest 2 weeks. The market's different in 2 weeks than it was 2 weeks prior.
So here's my deal, and even more so, and more respect for John Michael, is that if we look at what we do, environment is our driver, 100% environment. There are some human nature things. I guess the market has environment and just this human aspect of people driving the market, and just all the other things. If you look at what's going on internationally, influence the market, there's so many other drivers necessarily. I mean, we respond to price.
Yeah.
That is the price. I've got a question for you, John Michael, and this probably my last, is that we've been probably I didn't promise.
Keep going. We got tape. We're good.
We've been talking about, students, but if you look at the group of producers, are there age groups that are more likely to play in the marketplace, or is it a fairly broad net?
Well, the younger, I think, that's been the case for eons. But, the older you get, the more set in your ways you get, and the more you're going to plant, because the calendar says this is the week that I plant in. But I will say that our age group, I think, is probably more adept and more comfortable with marketing and trying to maneuver in the marketplace than probably our fathers. And then our kids are probably going to be even more prone to playing around with that type of stuff and experimenting at times. So yes, the older we get, the less likely we are to really rock the boat too much. but marketing has become less of a boogeyman than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Being that we're both from, spent some time in the Mid-South, how much different is grower mentality on marketing here compared to, I'll say, other places in the United States, with the focus mainly kind of on where we've been is the Mid-South?
That's a good question. I think it would go back to age and familiarity. That's still probably ruling the day no matter where you're at. I would say, without having a lot of experience in the Corn Belt, that they are more comfortable with it. And then here in Oklahoma and kind of the Southern Plains, a little bit less. The Mid-South is probably, it depends on, I would say you've probably got a mixture of both of those mindsets. Some are very comfortable with it, and some are going to avoid it like the plague, and they're going to and complain about it whenever it goes against them, and then if it goes good for them, then it was something they did. I mean, it's I would say you got a little bit of mix of those two mindsets of being comfortable with it and then just being completely anti-marketing.
So if you know anything, is it really growers that are willing to build bins? Is that a comfortable, being comfortable with marketing, off-season marketing, or is that truly going back to price and return on investment? Because a lot of growers around here never had interest of bins because they just market the wheat right off the combine. But we're starting to see some of those growers, at least I've seen them, that are a little bit more comfortable with holding wheat back, or are playing in the corn market or playing in the soybean market, are willing to build them to hold it.
I'll jump in and ask a question off of that. Would you say that it's more that they had, you mentioned opportunities for investment. Was it because they had the opportunity to invest in on-farm storage and therefore they've got it and now they're figuring out how to use it? Or is it that they wanted to market past harvest, and so they invested in the bins? Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
That's I guess my question is did you see? I mean, Brian's been here a lot longer than I have, so the question
coming
is
out of the great years of the late 2000s and the early 2000 teens, when there was prices were elevated. So, a lot of investment went into on-farm storage. I can't speak for like West Oklahoma, but I know the Mid-South, there was a tremendous amount of investment in on-farm storage.
I think it was a twofold thing, and this is just me speculating, is that one, a lot of that came back in that there was a seen miss opportunity. That there had been some opportunity if they had on-farm storage to make some significant monies. But I think the other aspect of it is that same point when we really see land prices and land availability start shooting up, because historically, if you had money, you bought land. I mean, that has been ingrained in the American farmer and rancher from the beginning of time. And so now all of a sudden you have this spike up, and now you have a lot more land wars. We have land bidding up. It's not just farming land. I mean, now you have recreational land, so it's costing more and more to own a piece. And so now you have this thing where it's not as easy to get land. You've seen a missed opportunity to have been able to store and potentially post-market some grains, and you have a little bit of extra revenue to invest somewhere. And so I think part of it might have been that land was a little bit harder to get at the price point they wanted at, and they just missed an opportunity. So a lot of the folks that I knew was kind of in that boat where I know some guys that built in that time frame because they got burnt by buying land earlier too. That they got over leveraged, and now they're saying, okay, those three things came, and now all of a sudden they've got a lot of bins.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, I felt like it was they had the resources to be able to put the on-farm storage in, and they took advantage of that. And maybe we'll figure out how to market it later, but it could have been they saw those missed opportunities and said, if I could have, now I can. Let's do it, and I'll use it to my advantage. It may not always be full, but I can pretty much pay it off, if not pretty close, right now, and not have to I'm not necessarily having to pay for the storage.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not saying they knew how to market, both when they were building them, but they missed. They knew they missed an opportunity.
Was that a key on that thing of like, I don't know, or I'm not 100% sure how to market my wheat or my corn or something, but I see that just selling it off the combine ain't it, and so I got to do something, and I got a little extra cash flow, and so that's what I was going to invest in.
I would still say there's probably guys with pens that still aren't sure how to properly market, and they've had them for a while. So I think it's that they saw an opportunity and they didn't really know.
Because it's amazing. And whenever I was in the Delta, they invested a lot of their money on not grain storage, but like fertilizer storage. So they could buy in December to apply, but they don't want to compete with the Midwest on like nitrogen cost, right? So I'll buy at the end of season when I'm not competing, but I have on-farm UAN storage.
Polytank sells in from mid 2008 through 2012. Just the number of you couldn't find a 2,000 gallon to 5,000 gallon tank.
And I tell you what, the investment in recreational infrastructure in the early 2010s was disgusting. Just how much land was just going. That was probably very productive farmland that is going to duck flyways. That means I don't, maybe discussing something right word, but
we're not profit maximizers, but we try to be, and that was an opportunity to possibly there's opportunity cost. I mean, all these things we talk about in our business and economics courses were at play there for sure. I know that happened at more than just Oklahoma, more than just the Delta. So
when I go back to what Brian's question on, like what do students that are leaving here probably need to have gained a lot better, and a lot of the growers that got into growing late or maybe just didn't have family homesteads or what have you,
all rights are reserved.
The traditional systems don't work when you're getting in late. You have to do this really inventive system that goes into alternative markets or something along those lines. You just can't be a wheat farmer and compete with wheat farmers that have had wheat farming for 40 years. You got to do something different, whether that's adoption of technology or whether it's we're going to do cut flowers in Ponca City, those kind of things. So it's intriguing.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time and coming and joining us on the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot too.
Well, great. That's good to know. I hope didn't come here with that intention. Just came here to talk, as Josh said. I did try to do a little bit of preparation, Josh, and I'll come back to that. No, we didn't cover any of it. You were right in that statement. You can at least leave here today. Beatrix may say otherwise in anything else that you do, but you were right in that point.
I love it.
Between her and Brian, it's the same.
You got to stay humble.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation of the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. And if you'd like to join the next discussion, send us an email, podcast@reddirtagronomy.com. Or you can send us a tweet. Our handle is RedDirtAg. Or you can always visit our website, reddirtagronomy.com, and you can find a place to submit questions there too. And of course, we'd like to thank Dr. John Michael Reilly for putting up with us for just a little under an hour so we could record this podcast. If you get a chance, visit our website, reddirtagronomy.com, to find out more information about our guests and any of the resources that we discussed on today's podcast or previous podcasts. Again, that's reddirtagronomy.com. For Dr. Josh Lofton and Dr. Brian Arnell, I am Dave Deacon, and we all want to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Ag Now Media, LLC, 2024. And yes, all rights are reserved.